Let's begin. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Svapna. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bo Jiang from this channel, Normal University. Here is the 14th APSCE webinar series. And this talk is supported by APSCE and is created by the development of ICT in the Asia Pacific neighborhood. It's a special interest group of APSCE. Today, we are very happy to invite Professor Svapna Godpati from Singapore Management University to give a talk. Dr. Svapna is an associate professor of information systems at the School of Computing Information Systems at Singapore Management University. Her research interests include text analytics, natural language processing, linguistics, social media, opinion mining, and business process analytics. Today, she will give us a talk about the topic of using machine learning to understand the students' learning process. That is a very interesting topic for the audience. Before the talk begins, let's see that the talk will last 45 minutes, and then we will have 15 minutes for answer questions and discussion. And during the talk, I encourage all attendees leave your questions in the Q&A zone. In the Q&A is in the middle of bottom of your Zoom window. And I will, after the talk, I will pass some of the questions to the speaker. And okay, Svapna, it's your time now.
Thank you, Bo. Thank you so much for the introduction. And thank you everyone for attending this talk. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are from. And I'm Svapna Godpati. I'll be going to give you this talk about how we can understand the learning that is happening in our classroom interactions, and more importantly, how discussion forums can help us in teaching and learning process. So I, as a professional, and your colleague in terms of education, I'm very much interested to study this discussion forums in terms of textual content and discover the insights which can help the learning process in the classroom. So without any delay, let me get started with some motivations of why discussion forums and why I'm interested in this particular talk. And I hope you're also going to encourage me with more questions at the end of this talk. Okay. So discussion forums are part of our teaching and learning process. And more importantly, with this pandemic now, with our face-to-face teaching converted to online, we can see that they have become an important channel for communication between the teachers and the students. Because they offer flexibility in terms of time, asynchronous, synchronous, and so on. There has been a lot of research work to understand how discussion forums can be very useful for such online teaching. Secondly, they also encourage interactions. So because of different settings of students, where learning models can change or students' profiles may change, discussion forums will provide a platform for having more interactions, either between the students or between the faculty and students. And such interactions also are useful for the learning part. And of course, they also provide an equitable space, like classroom discussion space, where only certain students tend to get chance to ask questions or answer and so on, whereas discussion forums are more in terms of equitable space for all the students in the classroom. So there is no doubt that discussion forums are now most important, and these are some examples of why they are very useful in our teaching and learning process. But the question we always have is, as instructors, are we really exploiting the discussions for effective teaching and learning process in the classroom? Are we really considering different aspects of discussion forums and using it back into our teaching and the student learning? So with that question, what is learning exactly we are looking into, and how discussion forums promote such kind of learning? So there has been a lot of research again, which has been providing the insights in terms of how discussion forums help in active learning. So unlike passive learners, where only the students will be listening to the faculty in the classroom, discussion forums provide such a platform where the active learning happens. Students start participating and sharing the ideas, and therefore actively collaborate and learn more things. Similarly, it promotes critical thinking, because the way you pose the questions in the discussion forum will help the students think of solving those challenges, exploring new ideas apart from what you are learning in the classroom, and that encourages the critical thinking of the students. So this is the learning part. And the last learning part, which is also very crucial for discussion forums, is collaborative learning. So collaborative learning is an important component where the knowledge is created as a community, and how that happens is because of the interactions, peer-to-peer interactions, and faculty peer interactions. So combining this learning into the discussion forums, the problem statement that I'm going to address today is about how classroom discussions can be converted into knowledge and insights using some automated tools for promoting effective teaching and learning. So here you can observe there are two important keywords for me. Firstly, it is about learning process, where I'm understanding the learning in the classroom. How do I understand? And how I can actually use that learning back into the classroom, which is by knowledge and insights. Okay, so let's come to the learning part of discussion forums. The first thing that we observe in discussion forums are based on some design principles. The settings of discussion forums always go with certain design principles, which encourage the personalized learning as well as the collaborative learning. And such design principles, where the foundation happens, are built on three important learning theories that integrate very well with discussions. The first learning theory is behaviorism. The behaviorism is mostly about how the students are responding to certain stimuli, and learning happens because of linking the stimuli and the response. So in case of discussion forums, it's the questions that the faculty or the instructors are posting, and how the behavior from the students in responding to that questions help us to understand the learning process. The second theory falls under cognitivism. So this actually talks about the theory of learning, the skills, the cognitive skills that the students are developing, and it focuses on how the students are processing the information that they are getting, and how they are organizing the new information and presenting that particular information using different types of cognitive structures, like cognitive structures like visual models, concept maps. So these kind of cognitive structures help the students to bring out new ideas, and that's where the cognitive skills development happens in discussion forums. And the last important theory in discussion forums is social constructivism. It's more about how the members of community are engaged in a sharing activity, and the learning is now a collaborative process where this knowledge developed from the students, from individuals, right, through the interactions, helps for better learning process. So taking these learning elements into consideration, we wanted to first understand how the personalized learning and collaborative learning happens in any particular discussion forum. And we did some simple survey with the students. I'm giving you the key highlights, even though it's a very deeper analysis. I'm showing you only one specific highlights of how students perceive the learning experiences from the discussion forums. So as we can see, the questions are phrased in two areas, understanding the personalized learning and also the collaborative learning components. I'm not going into the details of each of these ratings, but we observe that from these questions, the students are able to show, are able to demonstrate some kind of agreement in terms of learning experiences, where there is a lot of feedback, revision of topics, and solving of challenges, showing the cognitivism, complementary learning, sharing and exchanging of ideas, demonstrating the social constructivism, and lastly, anxiety and outside class interactions and behavior, displaying the behaviorism theories. So from this particular analysis, we understand that these three theories are well integrated with the discussion forums. So what we did next at the next step is, okay, there are theories in place, the discussion forums in place. How do we integrate this to identify the insights or discover the insights and knowledge that can be useful for teaching process? So let's study each of this theory and the discussion forum together to come up with a framework of what insights will be useful for learning process. So under this behaviorism, there are many theories, okay, many frameworks which have been proposed. And we try to study two interesting frameworks in this particular area. The first one is novice to expert model, and a bit modified here. We try to understand how the students are behaving in the discussion forums in terms of activity, in terms of how they are presenting their questions and answers and so on, and how we define a student profiling over there. So this is one of the learning framework. Second learning framework under behaviorism is about how it's known as operant learning theory, means how the behavior, the feedback given to the students will reinforce their learning process, how the behavior of the students change. So here we can see that there are certain types of teaching presence inside the discussion forums, which might increase the desirable behavior and also might have a negative impact on the desirable behavior. So for example, if you are in a discussion forums and the faculty writes a response saying that, yes, this is a good answer, or probably the faculty might say that, no, this has to be improved. This is not a very correct answer. So such kind of feedback actually enables to understand the student behaviorism. So taking these two frameworks and connecting them into discussion forum, we can see that there are three interesting insights that will be useful for teaching and learning process. The first one is definitely the participation analysis, where the students we are understanding how the participations of the students comes into the picture, then low activities, high activities, and so on. The student profile analysis, so we can know inside the classroom how the students are in my class, how they are progressing over a period of time, and so on. And faculty response analysis that can help us to understand how individual student is behaving in terms of the reinforcement learning. So this is about behaviorism in discussion forums. Similarly, as a next step, we have integrated two other frameworks, which is about cognitive skills. So this work, classification of messages in discussion forums, actually tries to explain how each message and the type of a message can enable us to understand what skills the students are displaying in the cognitism, in that particular taxonomy, right? And secondly, another framework which very much integrates with the discussion forums is community of inquiry framework. And if you look into the cognitive presence, we see that there is exchange of information, connecting new ideas, and also the discourse, how the students are writing the messages, what kind of ideas, how they present the ideas, the discourse, language aspects. are important for understanding the cognitivism. So integrating these two frameworks with the discussion forums, some examples, insights that we can get and use it for our teaching process, or like knowing what content, like what are the topics the students are discussing, where they are finding difficulties in discussions and so on, and some cognitive skills analysis, because as a teacher, I create some learning objectives for my class and I can understand how these learning objectives are achieved. I can intervene whenever there is a requirement, when there is a sudden change or some complexity that the students are facing. And of course, the discourse analysis also helps me to understand whether the students are building upon our ideas, or they're just stuck with only a small component of the idea, and then that's it. There is no evolution of knowledge. So this is how the cognitivism can be understood in discussion forums. The third learning, which is social constructivism, also comes from the community of inquiry framework, which talks about the social presence. Over here, we can see that it is more about how the engagement happens, the participation happens, and of course, the collaboration comes into the picture. Garrison and Garrison 2000, right? So they didn't really speak very much about the social presence, but there is another very interesting framework from Solar. They call it as collaborative learning framework. So over here, we can really understand what kind of skills are demonstrated in the classroom, in the discussion forums. So are you able to see the students having nice arguments like this, debates and so on? So there is a creative conflict kind of learning. There is a active learning, like motivating others, providing new information to the others and so on, even having nice, interesting conversations. For example, acknowledgements, thank you, and so on, or coming up with new tasks, so extending the conversations, etc. So from such social constructivism, we can understand the peer interactions over the weekly, or aggregated by certain days and so on, or understand the community profiles, where there is a strong community in groups inside the classrooms, and how the experts are created, who are the experts of the topics, and naturally knowledge transfer. Because as the community is growing, we are diffusing the knowledge inside the classroom, and how much of that knowledge transfer analysis can be done. So connecting all these three learning theories, we just come up with this framework, right? We call it as a classroom discussion analysis model, where we study the behavior analysis, content analysis, interaction analysis. Of course, we added some more other interesting elements onto the right, and we generate the actionable insights by studying some machine learning techniques, by using some machine learning techniques, so that it's more automated and easy for faculty to use in their process. So moving further, let me explain some examples of each of the main element here about behavior analysis, content analysis, and show you some examples of what features we can create, and how these features are useful, and what machine learning techniques are helpful for us. So when it comes to the behavior analysis, it's as simple as understanding the statistics in the classroom, such as forum postings, class participation rates, and so on. Even understanding the quantitative and qualitative analysis in terms of response given by the faculty. So how the students are responding beyond, again, how the students are improving in their participations. Also some comparisons, so that we know that who are the students who are doing really well in terms of participations for the discussion forums and so on. And finally, we can also generate the profile of the students, as you have seen, novice to the expert models. The machine learning techniques that are useful here can be descriptive statistics, classification models, or sentiment mining models. When I talk about sentiment mining models, I'm not just referring to a positive sentiment or a negative sentiment, but in an education domain, we are looking at how the acknowledgements are given by the faculty and how that acknowledgements are received by the students. So this is more about the sentiments in the context of education models, education domain. The second analysis examples can be more in terms of topics. So when a faculty is teaching certain concepts in the classrooms, we can see that the students will be learning in the classroom and also coming up with other types of topics that they link up during their research, homeworks, projects, and so on. So that kind of topic evaluation, and also some interesting summaries that can be generated, which can be used by the students later on, because it's a knowledge that has been created. And of course, we have different types of relationships that can be extracted by knowing the discourse of your message and the cognitive knowledge, what kind of message is that, and so on. So again, here we require a lot of machine learning techniques, and most important techniques come from NLP, natural language processing, because it helps us to understand the language aspects of the students. The third interesting concept here is the interaction analysis. Over here, the features are mostly about how the social interactions comes into the picture, how the students are communicating with each other. So what kind of emotions they are trying to present, understanding the students' profiles based on this, Solar learning frameworks, and also understanding the community interactions. So this is again very popularly used in social network analysis, where different types of community networks enable us to know how the participants are behaving and what kind of interactions are happening between the participants. So if we understand that, we can understand the diffusion of the knowledge and how the knowledge is evolving in the networks. For this, we are again depending a lot on sentiment mining techniques as well as social network models, apart from the classification algorithms and so on. So using these three interesting components, we further went to the students to understand what the students are expecting from the discussion forums. Is it just how do they think, how can we enhance their learning from these discussion forums? And we did some survey, and what our survey findings, there's a qualitative and quantitative survey both, and I'm just giving you a summaries. The students suggested that they are interested to have these three elements or these three features that can help them to improve their learning experience. One first very top one is the summary of each topic discussion. So it's not just that students are interested to participate in the discussions, but they are also interested to know what is the summary, so that this summary can help them to revise what they have learned through that discussion. Of course, they are also interested to have the reports of entire class discussions. And also, this one is very interesting. They want to see the questions and answers that have been discussed in the classroom. Discussion forums are very randomized. You will not have a very clear-cut questions and answers that can be extracted. So the students are really looking for, can we extract some and see some questions and answers? And what kind of visual dashboard they are interested in? They want to see that questions and answers, the main topics or top topics that have been discussed in the classroom, and also the flow of discussions, like how the discussions have moved, what is the evolution of topics, and how the discussions have progressed from one topic to another topic, how the topics are connected to each other. Because when you're teaching some particular course, all topics are interconnected in some ways, but how to identify that kind of concept maps. So this is what the students are really looking for from these classroom discussions. So with that in mind, we can now generate education systems based on that classroom discussion analysis model. So what kind of systems we can create? Classroom insight systems, which can help us to understand student communities, topics discussed, and so on. Question answering systems. So once the question answers are mined and we save it as a knowledge repository, when a new student sends a new question, we can quickly take it from our knowledge repository, and you can actually suggest the answers. We can also give some recommendation systems because from this knowledge in the discussion forums, you can also extract useful links, HTTP links or some things like that, and then use it as our repositories or resources where we can send it to our own students for their additional learnings. Summarization systems are very important because discussion forums can be really lengthy and reading everything can be very, very hectic for the students or even for the faculty. So such way, summarization systems comes handy. We also have opinion mining systems where we want to study how the students are feeling about certain type of topics. So here, when I say opinion mining, I'm talking about do they find it difficult? Do they find it easy, moderate? So that is the opinions that the students are talking about. So when they say that this topic is challenging, then what the faculty is supposed to do? How can they improve the next sessions, add new resources to the classroom, and so on. And finally, some information retrieval systems like it's a kind of repository knowledge, right? So asking questions, queries into that knowledge repository and retrieving some related information about that queries or information retrieval systems. Okay, so with that background, let me now take you to the applications examples where I will show you two interesting examples and the demonstration of these two systems as well to show you the learning as well as the integration of machine learning techniques, how the machine learning techniques are used in this particular context. So let me first start with a summarization system. So this particular system is trying to extract the summaries of the data that comes from your discussion forums. So we did again some understanding, and actually what the students are looking for is 87.5% of the students, they are looking for the summarized view of the topics. And if the faculty has to develop such summaries, it's not going to be easy. So keeping these two things in mind, we came up with the summarization system. Let me show you the data set, the sample data set of how this the discussion forum outputs are generated. So this data set is from the learning management system, which are very common in all the universities. And usually the discussion forum is a part of your learning management systems, right? The columns might change. They might also include date or other different columns, but usually we see the names of the students, some main topics, questions, and the actual message given by the students. Of course, we'll be having some challenges in that particular data set, like the students will be giving the spell errors, or there can be noise in the body, might not be very clean information, something like this, and so on. But this is generally how the students are presenting their discussions data set. So taking this inputs to generate the summarization systems, we rely on summarization techniques from machine learning models. So there are two summarization models. First, we call it as an abstractive summarization. The idea of abstractive summarization is from each document, which is like a message, we understand the main concepts and generate the complete sentence from the scratch. So it's an abstractive summarization technique. Whereas in extractive summarization technique, we extract the important sentences from the message and rank them. Okay, so we use this is most effective way of generating the summaries, and most of the time this extractive summarization it doesn't require a lot of training data set, whereas in abstractive summarization there is a need for training data set, particularly in the domain of education. So abstractive summarization is much more popular in news articles. Further, what kind of training approaches are popular? First one is supervised summarization, where we can actually have a lot of data labeled by the human annotators and use these data sets for labeling. In unsupervised, we just use the linguistic information and then just generate the summarization models. Again, as I mentioned, it's not easy to come up with lots of label data set. So keeping that component in mind, what we try to do is we went for the unsupervised summarization approach and on an extractive summarization techniques. So to devise a solution, so given this discussion forum data, now let's devise the machine learning solution. So first part is, you have seen that there are so many challenges, right? In terms of data, we have to do the data pre-processing. And when we talk about data pre-processing, some of the pre-processing aspects are converting data into lowercase, removing the spaces and things like that. Also tokenizing the entire post into multiple sentences, because we have to understand the sentence based analysis rather than the entire messages when we want to extract the topics inside it. And also removing the stop words and performing some kind of lemmatizations. So this is something to do with normalization, how we can improve the text quality before we throw it into some mathematics. So data processing is really about normalizing your text, cleaning your text before we give it to the mathematical model, so that we can have an improved quality of your outputs. The second step is the topic extraction. So when we talk about topic extraction, so one particular question might have various types of answers. And if you have to just summarize everything into one document, it can be too much of information and might not be really useful for the students. Rather, it can be topic-based summary, and that can help the students to know individual summaries by understanding the concepts more clearly. So that's where you have to identify the topics. To identify topics, many popular techniques for text mining comes into the picture, like clustering models or topic models like latent ditch-led allocation models and so on. However, there is a limitation for the LDAs because of amount of the data sets. LDAs perform really well when you have large data sets, and discussion forums depends on your classroom. If in your class you have only 100 students or 200 students, and for that week, you might be getting only 100 posts, and that might not be a very good data set for such LDA models. So in this case, choosing the right kind of text mining techniques also matters. So sufficiently, the clustering models can help us to identify the topics, and one such clustering models can be as k-means clustering. Okay, so in the application that we have developed, we used Pluto. And finally, for summarizations by topics, as I mentioned, we are going for the sentences based summarized, extractive summarization. The sentences are ranked, and we can generate the summaries. We have different types of summary generation tools, such as text rank. It's like a page rank algorithm, okay? Google uses the page rank algorithm, so similar to that. And a latent semantic analysis summarizer, also based on understanding that behind there is some kind of semantics to your data set. So these are two popular summaries. We tried both these summaries, and they have given a decent results. So we keep it for the summary generations. Let me show you a small demo of this particular tool to understand how the summaries can be generated and how it will be useful for the faculty or the students in their learning process. Okay, so I'll start with some data set, okay? So this is a sample data set. Okay, so this, you can see that it happened for week four lesson. And the students are given certain questions, maybe question 1, question 2, question 3, and so on. And different students have been answering those questions, right? These are the answers given by the students. So this is a data set that we have used in undergraduate classroom settings, and it's a very straightforward data set. Now, when this data set has to be processed, means we have to clean up and do all the pre-processing techniques and throw it into the tool. So this is a tool that can help us to generate the summaries. Let me upload this file and we generate the summary. Okay, so we can specify which particular column, because if you are using a different types of learning management systems, your columns might change. So we want to keep this tool more generic so that any researcher will be able to use it according to their own data set. So in my case, the column name is topics. So I use topics. And let's choose any question. For example, recommendations, question 2. So I want to generate the summaries on question 2. Okay. If you're not familiar with what is the summarization algorithms, which particular clustering algorithm I want to choose, you can leave it as for the default, because we have noticed that the default works quite well. And how many topics you expect in your answers. So see, when the faculty is creating a question, faculty already has some specific answers in mind, right? So you know that there will be mostly at most like 6 different answers or 8 different answers or 10 different answers in for this given question. So you just have to specify that particular cluster numbers into your answers, and then choose the summary size, small, medium, or large. So when we submit this inputs to the system, as I mentioned, the extractive summarization happens where the sentences, the most top ranked sentences are extracted and topic-based summaries are generated. Okay, so here we can see that what are the recommendations. So when a cashier staff is not around, so this is one of the recommendations, which tells that the role of cashier is redundant and it could be intern used for sandwich makers. Another, okay, this is a business process course. So in this course, the students are giving recommendations of how to improve the business process. Okay, so in these are different answers, and we can also see some tags for that summary. So it shows that, okay, the customer waiting time should be reduced, one of the recommendations. The branch managers, employees, so we can have more manpower and so on. So implementing certain payment systems such as kiosk for the customers. So you can see that these recommendations are very nicely given, and the system is able to capture the recommendations and a summary of those recommendations. You can correlate that when you see the keywords as well as that particular recommendations. We can see that almost 61 students have actually given this kind of answer, similar kind of recommendations, whereas 40 students have given answer or recommendation about helping cashiers, okay, cashier redundancy, having a peak help, extra manager. 50 students have provided this kind of recommendation. So it also gives you how many students have participated and what is the summaries that have been generated. So this summaries, when given to the students, they will learn from that particular question and then quickly revise the entire answer also. It is something like faculty is providing a sample answer to the students. Okay, so that's about the first application, which is the summarization system. The second system I would like to demonstrate is about the student community analytics. So we know that it's so important for us to understand the networks of the students and how the knowledge is diffusing, how the student communities are formed, and so on. It not only tells about the network analysis, such as the density of the network or the transitivity of the network, so that how the cohesive the networks are and so on. We can also study the learning profiles. I'm not going to give you the details of the techniques here, but overall solution model is mostly about collecting lots of data. Over here, we try to study the data set from the Slack. Slack is becoming more popular nowadays, right? So we, in our school, our faculty are quite active using not only our learning management systems discussion forums, but also social media forums. As the students are changing, they are enjoying Slack and so on. So there are so much of data pre-processing required because Slack has a different type of networking and structure. And then we can analyze behavior of the students, learning profiles, message types, and networks. So these are the various components of this particular system. Let me show you a demo of this system again. Oops. Okay. As we can see, we try to create more this particular tool aligned with the Slack. But if any other e-learn system which has the similar kind of data setting, so when you have replies, when you have messages, and of course likes, all those kind of settings, the same machine or the same system can be reused for any other social media applications. So here we can always look into the messages. As I mentioned, you want to understand whether there is a questions or answers and so on, or you can study the analysis of the networks, how the networks are changing. I'm going to show you a weekly analysis of one of the courses. IS 216 is the course for the second year students. We call it as a web application development. Okay. And we can visualize the networks every week, and we can see how the networks are being formed, what are the different statistics of the network, and so on. So as you can see here, we have a student with quite popular 6 connections. So started talking in week 0 itself, a faculty. We also have TAs. Okay, so the TAs started talking about certain questions inside the discussion forums. You can also understand how the connections are forming. The type 4 triads are more favorable because it shows that more connections are established among the students. So type 4 is more popular ones. So we want this type 4 to be growing. And in week 1 already you can see that there is a very good establishment of connections, and we can see that the TAs are becoming quite active. 21 connections for this TA, 5 connections not yet there, and we can understand how different TAs are also growing popularity in this analysis. And let me go ahead a little bit more. Okay. So this is a weekly analysis, okay? It's not accumulated, it's just weekly analysis. And now we can see that there is a nice group of groups forming in there. So this TA and the students are quite connected with this particular TA. So the responses are given by the TA, and another TA also with so many students and connections. Whereas this TA is quite interesting because they are having connections with the faculty, the students, and also establishing the triads, the type 4 triads. Over here, this TA is mostly with the type 1 and type 2 triads, whereas this TA is encouraging mostly the type 4s, which shows the communications are much more rich in terms of knowledge transfer. Okay, so with that, I come to the last demonstration, a very quick one, to show you how the discourse analysis can help us to understand the student learning skills. So I gave you the summaries of the students, right? I'm quickly showing you how we can understand the learning skills of the students based on the Solus framework. So a particular student might be having certain types of learning skills, and we can also understand how the characteristics of the students are applied. So whether the students are outgoing, based on the discourse. This is a study which comes from the linguistics, whether they are respectful, whether they justify the arguments, logical. So in that way, the characteristics of the students can be generated. And of course, we also know weak overall learning skills, how much of active learning is happening, how much of creative conflict is happening, whether the students are having a good arguments and so on, and is there an acknowledgement from the students. And if a faculty discovers that there is not sufficient learning outcomes, we can always make some intervention. And let me now conclude this talk with some challenges in developing such systems. I can categorize the challenges into 3 groups. The first one is the discussion forum designs. So it's very important for us to set the design principles correctly for the discussion forums to enable lots of discussions inside the classrooms. For example, coming up with the learning outcomes, the teaching presence itself, as well as the students' motivation factors. Sometimes you have to give some carrots to the students so that they can participate in the presentation. The second challenge we face is in terms of the discussion forum data itself. See, always with any data set like text, we face the challenges about domain words, spellings, and there can be integration of other types of formats like images, attachments, and specific data from the maths, programming courses, and so on. So these are the challenges that we need to address in these systems. And the last category falls under algorithms, where we are looking at how algorithms are changing and how they can be useful for education and domain, because the algorithms are generic ones, and if we need to really tune them for the education domain specific data sets. With that in mind, the future work that we are also continuously working on this is about coming out with non-textual data analysis, designing and developing QA systems, also some scoring systems like automated grading kind of things, and knowledge management systems. With that, I come to the conclusion of this talk. I think I am on time. This is my team. We are working on these projects for past 1 year, and we have several publications in the area of discussion forums. We're very happy to answer your questions now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for Swapna's excellent speech.
Thank
and
you.
If you have any questions, please leave it in the Q&A. And before we answer the questions, I want to summarize the speech. I'm very happy to see Swapna to share the two very interesting application examples of machine learning in analyze the students' learning interaction data. And Swapna also developed a very easy to use tools to help the faculty, to help teachers to analyze this data. We know that to analyze this data for faculty is not easy. It's not easy for them. And let us see any questions in the QA. Okay. Oh, the first question from the audience. I would like to ask about your current research, how to achieve automated and real-time analysis to ensure the timeliness of the analysis information.
Okay, it's a very important question, Duan. Thank you for asking me this question. First part is, see the systems that we are using, like eLearn systems, learning management systems, or Slack, they're not integrated with this particular models, right? The systems that we are developing using machine learning. So the best approach that we have realized is every week after the lesson and the discussions are completed for that week, our school IITers will be sending the complete Excel spreadsheet to us. That's why I have this Excel spreadsheet, which is for week 4. I demonstrated just now. Okay, so I just have to upload this Excel spreadsheet to the Amazon Web Service, and this tool is running on my cloud. I don't even have to maintain it. I don't have to run it on my machine. It's just on the cloud. So any faculty with this particular data set are able to use this with a simple guidelines. A small, simple user guide is sufficient for them to use. So learning management systems within our school are easy to answer. However, when it comes to other kind of tools like Slack, it requires a little bit more effort, because Slack is it's a paid service. Okay, so you can of course have some certain amount of free dollars, I think. So what we do is, using that free dollars, we extract the JSON files, and this JSON file has to be uploaded to the same service to every week. And once you upload that to the weekly ones, we can generate the weekly analysis on the Slack data set as well. So did I answer your question, Goan?
Okay. Oh, there are another question in the chat. What are LSIM, LSIM, and ESIM in the summarization system?
Can you please repeat the question?
What are LSM and ESM.
Ah, okay. Oh, okay, okay. I think we are talking about these things, right? Let me open it. Okay. So here, okay. So these are the techniques that are quite popular for the what is that? The text summarization. LSA is latent semantic analysis techniques. Basically, it is semantics. Okay, so it is trying to understand the relationship between the words. So latent semantic analysis is used not only for summarization, it can be used for extracting the topics, like topic analysis. It can be used even for the natural language processing elements such as classifying certain textual components. So LSA is a technique that can be applied. Text rank is a technique that can be applied, which is very similar to identifying the most important sentences inside your document. So these are the techniques that we are using. And the next one is ESM, is it? Yeah, I think so. About ESM. Okay, generating the ESM. When we are actually looking at any clustering algorithms, we are also looking at how good your clusters are. At the end of the day, we measure the clusters by using internal evaluations, such as intra-cluster distance and inter-cluster distance. So within the clusters, the document should have a high similarity, and between the clusters, document should have a lower similarity. So this is what is ISM and ESM kind of numbers that can help us, the faculty, also to know whether the clusters which are generated by the system are good clusters, the quality is good or not. So did I answer that question as
well?
Yeah. Okay.
Another question from audience is your tool available for us to use?
Please repeat.
Is your tool available for us to use?
The tool which is automated summary one, yes, I can share with the audience. They can use this particular tool, but we are still writing the user guide. Once I generate the user guide, it becomes more easy for them to understand what should be the columns and how you put your data set inside the columns, which inputs you can choose, what does each part explains, and so on. So we are actually developing that, developing the tools user guide so far, not yet there. See, we are still creating. This is how the user guide we want to prepare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question from Tracy.
Yeah.
Which languages are now supported by the systems? Only English?
Yes, only English.
Only English. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, only English.
Question from Lee Sung Kim. How do you analyze students' learning skills? Did you use text mining?
Okay, so when we talk about the student learning skills, if I'm looking at learning skills at the cognitive development level, so for example, I want to know what is the cognitive statistics of the students. So this is one such analysis, and the learning outcomes. So I pick up the messages, I understand this type of the messages, and how do I understand the type of the messages? By applying the text mining techniques, and then build the learning skills of the students based on that text mining results. So without text mining, it becomes manually impossible. Therefore, the messages have to be processed using text mining, and the outputs will be generated. What is the accuracy and the performance? I'm getting somewhere around 70 to 72% of accuracy so far. We are still working on this project where we can improve the accuracies of these text mining techniques.
Okay, so now you can read the fourth question in the QA. It's very long.
Okay, let me see.
From Lee Hui Li Si.
Yeah. Okay. May I know, in sense making of data collected in system, to what extent do the researchers need good contextual knowledge of the content or discussion topics discussed? Good contextual knowledge of the content. Okay. See, to develop that particular tool, so the researchers are developing the tool, right? If I understand your question, you're coming from the point of the researchers. So if you are a researcher and if you are developing a tool, you definitely need a subject matter expert. So in my case, when I'm working with, let's say I'm working with my finance faculty, I'm not a subject matter expert of the finance faculty or even economics faculty. So without the proper content understanding of the outputs generated by the tool, it becomes very difficult for us to evaluate the tool and to improve the tool. So it becomes so it is important to have a proper contextual knowledge and develop the tool. Did I answer your question, Lisi? Or did I misunderstand your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems to be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions?
Yeah. There's more questions from the chat. You can see.
That's all right. No more questions.
Yeah.
I don't see any more questions. Okay, Lisi.
Yeah. You can see. Can you see the question in the chat?
No more. Are you able to see? I can't see any more questions.
Wait.
I can see. Which references did you use for cognitive skills?
Yeah.
I have been using for so far for cognitive skills 2 types of references. One is the Bloom's taxonomy. The other one is the Scholars collaborative framework. Because under Scholars collaborative framework, there is active learning, which is also a type of cognitive skills analysis. These are the 2 frameworks that I use for the cognitive skill analysis. Would you like to suggest any other frameworks that will be useful? Kim?
Which references did you use for cognitive skills?
Yeah, I just used those 2, but I'm happy if anybody suggests me other types of frameworks for the cognitive skills. Okay. Lisi has another question. Can we share the slides? Are we sharing this recording by any chance? I'm not sure how the organizers handle this question.
Okay. I have a question about your research, and okay. I know analysis the interaction between students and teachers is very interesting and it's very important. From your data, is it possible to analyze what motivates students to interact with others? What motivates students to interact with teachers, with TA, and with other students? Normally, we can use some questionnaire to ask questions to a student to answer. Is it possible to develop a data-driven tools to manage the learning process data to extract the factors that cause the student to interact with others?
Okay, it's a very interesting question. So, see, when we are talking about the motivation factors for the students, is it automatically, can we detect such kind of motivation factors from the data itself? I didn't see such research so far. I didn't go, I've been doing a lot of discussion forum, research, literature survey. Nobody really tried to study the automated way of detecting the, students' motivation factors. They only try to interpret from how the students are behaving. Yeah. That's it. So that's the only element that I can generate so far. But Django, it's a very, very important question. I have to explore this idea. Nothing so far. Nothing.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for Savannah's excellent, very interesting speech. Also, thank you for all audience participation. And this webinar stop here. Thank you.
Thank you everyone. So much. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, APSCE, for this.
Long Xiang, do you have something to say?
No, that's fine. Yeah, thank you. So please support our future, our future webinars. We still have 4 to 5 more webinars in the second half of the year. Yeah, we're still under programming right now, but then stay tuned. We're going to announce very soon.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Bye.
Bye.